Damping off, how to prevent and manage a common seedling disease in your microgreens. Written July 11th, 2024 by Garrett Corwin and narrated by Garrett Corwin. So if you've ever started growing microgreens only to see them wither and die soon after germination, you've probably been encountering something called damping off. Now, damping off is a common phrase for the effect that certain pathogens have on young plants. It's often used to refer to a collection of soil-borne diseases. Plants suffering from damping off will see their stems wither and rot at the soil line. And we'll discuss what causes damping off, how to mitigate its presence, and what to do if it takes hold. Before we jump in, though, a bit about me. I'm the founder of Piedmont Microgreens, which is a large farm in Durham, North Carolina, where we grow about 400 trays per week with a team of just 2 full-time employees, not including me. Over the years, we've sold to chefs, wholesalers, schools, and of course, farmers markets. We're also Harmonized GAP certified with the USDA to meet the standards required by larger distributors and retail partners. I'm also the co-founder of Microgreen Manager, which we'll touch on more at the end. So what is damping off? Like I said, it's a soil-borne fungal disease that usually affects seedlings primarily during the germination and the early growth stages. If you get into the late stage of your grow out, especially for longer growing herbs, and you haven't seen damping off, it's unlikely it'll show up out of the blue. You'll usually know right when it comes out of germination. So it's caused by several pathogens, including Pythium, Rhizoctonia, and Fusarium species. These pathogens, they often thrive in wet, poorly drained, and overcrowded conditions. So if these kinds of conditions sound familiar, it's because they're perfectly describing a germinating tray of microgreens where you have a really, really high density of plants. You have no airflow because they're stacked on top of each other. You have no light, and you generally have a lot of moisture trapped in there. So the pathogens that cause damping off often enter the farm in a sort of dormant state, but present in your grow medium after hitchhiking in, usually on your seeds, and they're sort of triggered by those beneficial conditions of germination. Now, symptoms of damping off. So seedlings fail to emerge or they collapse shortly after germination. What you'll see is that the stem at the soil line, so right before the stem submerges or goes under the soil line, it'll appear sort of water-soaked, thin, mushy, brown. Sometimes there's a white fungal growth visible on the surface, on the soil surface, and then shortly after you'll see sort of rapid wilting and yellowing of the seedlings. And what's sort of happening here on a technical level is that the pathogen is finding its way into the xylem and phloem of the plant. The xylem and phloem are responsible for transporting basically food and water from the root system, from the bottom of the plant up to the leaves, and it will destroy those systems. And that's why you'll see a sort of shriveling, browning, wetness of the stem at the soil surface. And then obviously when you cut off those necessary food and water sources from the upper parts of the plant, that's why the plant then starts to wilt and die. So how are we going to prevent damping off? Well, the best way to do this is to just buy reputable soil and seeds. The 2 primary inputs to your farm are these 2, soil and seeds. And so despite a company's best effort, the provider of the seeds and soil, to say sterilize the soil or test the seeds for pathogens, it's impossible to be perfect, right? To consistently provide perfectly sterile inputs. So your best hope as a farmer is to buy seeds and soil from reputable sources and never reuse your soil. As tempting as it is, the soil seems like it could be reused, especially to new and beginner farmers. It seems like a waste to just throw it away after one use, but you are just begging for pathogens to incubate and grow and sort of spawn out of thin air, if you will. So don't ever grow seeds that have fallen on the floor either. The floor is not exactly a clean place, and so it's going to pick up pathogens. Again, I know it's tempting. You spill 5, 10, 20 pounds of expensive seed on the floor. You're just getting started as a grower, and it really hurts to see that cost thrown away without being able to grow with those seeds. But you're really just risking both ruining that crop and then spreading the disease to your other trays. So after you've done that, after you've found good seed suppliers, soil suppliers, which we have blogs on good, at least North American soil providers, I believe, packaging providers. We do have a couple blogs on seed suppliers in different countries and continents, so check those out. But once you are happy with your suppliers and you're certain that you've done the best you can there, you're going to move on to your cleaning and sanitation protocols. So to get into the nitty gritty here, cleaning means removing organic matter like stems and dirt from a surface. So this would be like washing the trays so that they look clean. There's no visible dirt on them, or wiping down your harvest tables so they look clean. There's not physical grit on them. Sanitizing means dramatically reducing the presence of pathogens to a level deemed safe for food contact. Now, your growing trays don't have to be sanitized because they're technically not a food contact surface. Obviously, your containers have to be single use. Your harvest bins, if you have harvest bins for mixing different varieties before packing, your tables, your knives, those all need to be sanitized. So we use a product called SaniDate 5.0 to sanitize everything, whether it's our trays, our harvest totes, knives, tabletops, etc. But an important distinction here, I suppose, is that cleaning must always precede sanitizing. If you throw even concentrated SaniDate on your dirty trays, the soil is blocking the SaniDate from accessing the surface underneath the soil, and so it can't do its job of sanitizing. You have to clean. You have to remove the obstructions, the organic matter, before you can sanitize. And this is something that they really drill into if you pursue any form of GAP certification. So I won't belabor the point, but this is sort of the other thing that needs to happen in conjunction with having good seed and soil suppliers. So do not reuse your 10-20 trays without first cleaning and sanitizing each one each week. If damping off is present in the farm, cleaning and sanitizing all tools and trays will help to stop from spreading further. Lastly, a few other things that I would say are tertiary, and they will help, but should not be your first line of defense, is one, watering appropriately. So don't overwater, especially when you're planting. If you waterlog that soil and then you put them into germination, they're going to be sitting in this soggy, wet soil, again, ripe for pathogens to develop. So remember that damping off usually develops during germ because the conditions are perfect, wet, warm, dark, and without airflow. Your microgreens don't need that much water to make it through germination because they're likely stacked with a paver on top. There's not a lot of moisture that's going to be escaping or drying up anyway. Waterlogging the tray during planting will push out all the air pockets from the soil as well, which leads to anaerobic conditions, airless, oxygenless conditions. Again, great for pathogens. The other things you can do are improve your air circulation. So air circulation is good for trays in germination. It might not be super impactful since, again, they're going to be stacked. It's not really easy for air to get in there. And then, of course, when they're under grow lights, having good air circulation will be helpful as well. You want to create a gentle breeze throughout the farm. You don't want to blast your germinating trays with nonstop air. That's not how nature is in most cases, so it shouldn't be how your farm is. Too much airflow will dry out your germinating trays, leading to even faster death than the damping off would cause anyway. And then, of course, you want to maintain optimal temperature. Your farm, your germ area, etc., should be around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I believe that's about 20 to 24 Celsius. The germination area, if possible, should be a few degrees colder than the rest of the farm. Most crops prefer the same temp. Basil is an exception, and then lastly, how do you manage damping off? You've done all your best to prevent it. How do you manage it now that it's shown up in your farm? And after growing for nearly 5 years at this point, and having my fair share of damping off issues with different crops, with my farm as a whole, I can say that there's not really much you can do about it once it develops. Your best option for an intervention that I've tried with not that much success, some other people swear by, is to physically scoop out the soil from the affected area and throw it away. If you try this method, you want to scoop out the affected area plus an extra 1-inch buffer probably to be sure you really removed everything, and then spray that empty area with dilute hydrogen peroxide or Xylitol or SaniDate, whatever your sanitizing agent is. Honestly, again, in my opinion, the damping off still continues to spread. Maybe it slows it down. Maybe it slows it down enough to get what you need out of the tray at harvest time before it gets composted. But that's really the only retroactive thing that I've heard or tried to slow down or manage damping off once it shows up. So that's it. I hope this was helpful in understanding what damping off is. Remember, it's a bucket term for a handful of soil-borne diseases. Really, to manage it, you want to buy from reputable sources, have a good cleaning and sanitation protocol, and then otherwise make sure the abiotic factors in your farm, like airflow, temp, and water, are on point. And with that, I will wrap it up with one last thing about crop planning. So one thing we don't talk about enough as growers is just how much mental load we carry week to week. We try to remember orders, changes to those orders, customer names, all that good stuff. We try with sticky notes, but sometimes it just doesn't cut it. So we built Microgreen Manager to help offload all of that mental load. It turns standing orders into clear weekly task lists, and it tracks it all in one place on a simple to read dashboard where you can see everything you have going on. So if you're starting to feel the strain, take a look. There's a free plan to test it out and a 30-day free trial. You can learn more at microgreenmanager.com.